Okay, here's the inside chamber from the WP 48mm air fork. So I've never worked on a WP before. All my stuff has been on Showa, and I couldn't find any information on the internet on how to do the install or the separation of the cartridge on the damper side. So I'm going to do this video today and see if we can figure it out and help some of us along the way. So the first thing I notice here is the seal head. In there's a little circlip with a plastic spacer underneath it. What we're going to do to begin with is just remove that circlip, take off that spacer and see where we go from there. Okay, so I've removed that plastic washer, and all you can see here is a set of flats here, approximately 24mm. Now what I'm led to believe is the seal head here is retained in place with thread lock. I've got a 24mm wrench from a previous suspension project on a Showa shock. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat up that area of the chamber to try and break the thread lock. I've got the inner cartridge secured in a heavy duty racing from the East Coast, their shaft blocks. So let's see if we can get this off. Okay, so all I did was just leant on it with a wrench and gave it a mild bit of heat, and now you can see it's gently working that thread lock. Just going to give it a little spray of cleaner just to penetrate the threads. Don't know if this is the correct way, but there we go. There you can see that just the thread lock. The rest will screw out, and hopefully there we can see the thread lock. We'll wipe that off later. Hopefully we can now separate the tubes. So there we are. There is the damper rod with the mid-valve piston on there that we're going to replace in a moment, and it all comes out in nice one piece. There's the piston seal band that we've got to transfer over to the new mid-valve, and there's the tube. We'll just give that a little bit of a clean out before re-prep. Okay, there we can see the mid-valve. There is the 7mm nut. Got the top out spring underneath. So what we're going to do, there's no peening on there. I believe it's just Loctited on, so we're just going to take that off. Measure all the stacks, especially the rebound on top, because that's going to go back on with a new piston. Okay, there we have it. There's our mid-valve compression stack, our rebound, various spacers. So what we're going to do is we're going to spec all of that out, make sure we've captured everything, and then we'll go take that piston band, transfer that to the new piston, and set up this new fork. Okay, so here's our spacers. Simple single stage mid-valve compression stack, and then one thing to notice on the very face of the piston, we've got these two smaller shims that act as bleed shim. Okay, so there's our rebound stack captured on a screwdriver. Sorry, that's our compression stack. There's a rebound stack, and here's this little piston ring, and there's a little O-ring underneath there as well. I'm going to take that off. It's all in one piece, so just gently. There you can see the little O-ring that goes on the piston that helps that piston band seal. So we're going to clean that off and put that on the new mid-valve from MX Tech. Okay, there's the new piston with the old piston band inside. Just gently ease it on so it doesn't leave any edges. Obviously that's got to seal down, and it's important that is on properly for smooth operation and good sealing, all that stuff. Okay, so here's a better look. There's the post that the mid-valve shims sit on with this cone-shaped backing spacer. I believe that acts like a spring. There's a new piston, and there's a stack with the settings that we see there provided by MX Tech. So I'm going to just use their Plush MX stack. I'm going to measure that up and then we're going to install that on the piston. Okay, just bring this into focus so you can see there's one big 24.1 and a couple of a 10.1 and a 10.2. They're the spacer shims. And I believe the mechanical O-ring like that goes on top. Okay, so we're going to build the rebound now. So what I've done, I've spec'd out everything that was on our rebound. Now, the specification calls for a 25.1, which is this one extra shim that's provided, and the stock uses these 26, I'm sorry, 0.1. So we're going to take them out. So that'll be our first bleed shim, the 28.1, then all the way down. One thing I did notice is the last shim, it's spec'd as a 0.3, but the one I actually took off is a 0.1, but it should be okay because that's the pivot shim. Okay, so now I'll just get it into focus. Come on. Here you can see the top nut with that neat little check valve. Just going to gently just tighten that down. And the sheet, it gives us a specification of the total height of what we want to play with to make sure this thing's not set up too long. So I'm just going to measure that. So it's is it 45 millimeters from the top. There you can see, perfect. So what we're going to do now is put a little bit of Loctite on. It's a 30mm socket. I've got a mini torque wrench here. The number I've heard is 30 inch-pounds, so we'll give that a try. And there we have it. It's all assembled. All we've got to do now is just put that back in to that tube, reassemble the cartridge, put a little bit of red Loctite on that bottom seal head, then obviously bleed the fork, and then put it back on the bike. Here you can see, let's get it in focus. Now we've got a little bit of mid-valve float. So all I did, Loctited this, put it back on with the 24mm wrench. The spacer and the circlip goes back on. We have our suspension fluid, 380 mils. There's a little bleed port just there, so obviously it pays just to put your thumb over that when you add the oil, and then we'll put the base valve back in, and then we'll put the fork back together.